Boom! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's your boy, Nolan Hawkeye Anthony here, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic week wherever you may be and however you may be listening. I wanted to just put out some fun content this week with the official start of the Iowa Hawkeye football season about a month away, and I know you guys are as excited as your boy Nolan Hawkeye Anthony is. So with that being said, I wanted to dive into the three most important head-to-head matchups Iowa will have in the 2021-2022 football campaign or season. But before I get into that, I want to mention going to 247hawkeye.com. And if you haven't done it yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It really means a lot when you do that. We're already almost up to 80. We've only 80 subscribers, and we've only been doing this for about a month and a half. I am truly grateful for those of you guys who have hit that button. So thank you. And if you don't want to do that, if you don't think I've earned it, just hit the like button, comment, talk with me. I live all the way out in California, so any comment I enjoy. I like chatting with you guys and talking all things Iowa Hawkeye sports. And last but not least, be sure to listen to the NHA podcast. It's out every Wednesday. You guys can find it on the YouTube channel, SoundCloud, iTunes, the whole 9 yards. The links will be in the description. Anchor, the whole 9. The links will be in the description. And if you want to support the channel, the website, the whole shebang, I do have a link in the description to a PayPal if that is the route you want to go. All right, let's get into the three matchups that will determine the Iowa Hawkeyes 21-22 season's success. And, right off the bat, I want to say that I have to define what a successful season will be for the Iowa Hawkeyes and what I would judge it as for it to be a successful season. Now, in order to do that, it is important to note how good the Iowa team is that is going into a season. I'll give you guys an example. 2015 was a resounding success. The team was not, really that spectacular. There were tons of question marks, and the Hawkeyes went on to rattle off 12 straight victories. Whereas 2016 or the 2010 teams, there was a ton of expectations, and the Hawkeyes, unfortunately, came up a tad bit short, but the expectations were there nevertheless. So with this current roster, okay, I have even higher expectations for this year's team than I have had for previous teams that I have said that they would win 9, 10, even 11 games. The last, I would say, 3 to 4 Iowa Hawkeye teams have been uber talented. Some of the most talented teams as far as depth goes, and you really look at the recruiting that Iowa has had, and that is why it has been that way. And you look at the on-the-field success, and me saying that those were some of the most talented Kirk Ferentz teams isn't really too far off, not to mention the amount of guys that get drafted to the NFL. Again, 9-win season, 10-win season, and then a 6-2 performance last year with a ton of setbacks that would have derailed any other program into an abysmal campaign or season. So for this team, I'm going to say that this Iowa team, which I suspect they will be ranked in the top 18, I think they will be anywhere from 18 to 15. That's where I think they will be. Where I would put them as the top team in the Big Ten West. I think that they have the most talented guys coming back, and there's virtually no position on this Iowa team that is a huge question mark. And because of that, they should be the favorite in the Big Ten West. Now, I would say a majority of places have Wisconsin as the top dog. And I fully disagree with that. Last year, they were abysmal and they lost a handful of guys, but that, that's what you get when you have rattled off a bunch of successful Big Ten championship type seasons like Wisconsin has had. So I'm not going to hate on Wisconsin, but I do think Iowa should be realistically top 15 going into this season. And the top 15 Big Ten West team, in my eyes, should win anywhere from 9 to 10 to 11 games. And for me, I'm going to go somewhere in the middle and say 10. We're going to go with 10 wins. And again, I think the goal should be a Big Ten championship appearance. And let's be honest, folks, it's been a little while since Iowa has played in one, and they have come just shy of making it to Big Ten championship games last year, being a half a game short from Northwestern. Had they beaten Northwestern, they would have played in that game, and I think they would have had a better shot at beating Ohio State than Northwestern did. The year before, they were about a game behind Wisconsin, I believe, or whoever it was when they had their 10-win season. So Iowa has been close. And again, Kirk Ferentz is not going to be the head coach forever. He needs to capitalize on the talent that he has and get Iowa into a Big Ten championship, and he absolutely has the talent to do so. So without further ado, let's take a look at the three teams or the three games that will determine this Iowa Hawkeye season. Now, listen, guys, there are probably more than three games that will determine the Iowa Hawkeye season, and it is hard to boil an entire season into three games. And the best way that I can say to look at it is what three games, if Iowa wins and or loses, will it affect their season the most? So I need to tell you guys right off the bat, before I go into my top three, why I will not be choosing one of these teams, which is the Iowa versus Iowa State game. Now, I'll fully admit, I live in California. This game does not mean nearly as much to me as it does to most Iowa fans who live in the state of Iowa. I remember going and visiting my family in Fort Dodge and going to Twin Lakes and seeing it was pretty split. I mean, there were still more Iowa fans than Iowa State, but it was pretty split. Now, broadly speaking, guys, this game means very little. And I've argued many times that it means way more for Iowa State than it will ever mean for Iowa. And I'll give you guys an example. Iowa has had many seasons where they have lost to Iowa State, aka the 2002 Brad Banks season, where they lose to Iowa State and go on to have a spectacular season, and losing to Iowa State was just like, who cares? It is what it is. It happens. Whereas on the flip side, when Iowa State beats Iowa, it means the world, even when they have a normal season, which is about a 4 or 5, 6 win season. Okay. For whatever reason, a lot of people are acting like Iowa State has been this juggernaut recently. And that's just, that is furthest from the truth. Yes, Matt Campbell has gotten them to a decent spot. But to be honest, they've really only had one spectacular season, and that was this past season in the Coof year. So we'll see if they can do it again. But this is about Iowa, not Iowa State. Guys, if Iowa were to lose this game, it would mean nothing to their season. It's nice when they can beat Iowa State and hold on to the Cyhawk. It means a fair amount in the state, but as for the entirety of the Iowa season, in my eyes, this game means very little as opposed to the other games that Iowa will be playing. And to be honest, I think a lot of people are going to get mad at this, but the game means as much, a little bit more, because this year Iowa State is ranked, but in most years, they're pretty bad. In most years, when Iowa beats them, it means nothing, but if they lose to them, it means everything. So usually, Kent State or Colorado State would be as important teams to beat as Iowa State, because, to be honest, Kent State and Colorado State usually have decent teams. So it will not be Iowa State, guys. And I know a lot of you guys are going to disagree with that, but in my eyes, whether Iowa wins or if they lose, it means virtually nothing. The only thing that beating Iowa State will do for the Iowa Hawkeyes is help their rankings and help the perception of them for 1, maybe 2 weeks. Outside of that, it again, nothing. And it will not mean a ton when Iowa gets 4 or 5 games deep into the Big Ten season. All right, guys, so that's enough ripping on Iowa State and telling you guys why I am not choosing the Cy-Hawk game. So we need to choose the first game that will mean nearly everything for this Iowa Hawkeye campaign. And I am going to start with the first game, Iowa versus Indiana. So I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit, not a ton, from this Blackheart Gold Pants opponent preview. I do believe that there are already some Las Vegas numbers on this game. And if there is, I will pull it up and let you guys know. But right off the bat, the reason why this game, in my eyes, is one of the 3 most important games, and I will order them in significance at the end. But the reason why this is an important game, guys, is because it will, if Iowa can win, it will set their season up with a lot of momentum. And yes, momentum matters. And a perfect example is the year before, where Iowa won 6 games, but lost their first 2, and that literally determined the rest of the season. Now, Iowa was still able to finish as a top 15 team, and it was widely accepted as a great season. But regardless, those first 2 games were wildly important, and I believe the same thing. In a conference where 1 game will separate everybody, in my eyes, this game becomes paramount for Iowa to just start the Big Ten season on a high note and really get going. Matter of fact, if I have to choose between Iowa beating Indiana and Iowa State, I'm choosing Indiana. No question about it. So let's read a little bit about Indiana. They return quarterback Michael Penix Jr., redshirt junior. Let's see what they have to say. I have never been more convinced that a team pulled a Freaky Friday than IU's body swapping win and game of the Big Ten season against Penn State, which saw the 2 squads head in very different directions. True. Penn State had an abysmal season, whereas Indiana, they played great. Yet that just showed how little I paid attention to what Allen built at IU. And the guy who's been the dude for much of the past 2 seasons. In 12 games in injury-shortened 2019 and 20 campaigns, he's completed 62. This is Michael Penix. He's completed 62% of his passes for 8 yards per completion. He's tallied 25 touchdowns. Yada, yada, yada. And adding to it, the Hoosiers have won 10 of 12 in the last 2 seasons. Listen, guys, Indiana, in my eyes, this is a very winnable game for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I do think that Indiana will be a good team. I think it will be them and Ohio State at the top of the Big Ten East. I do think possibly Penn State and Michigan can make some noise, but that's who I would put as the top 2 teams, which again, all the reasons I have Iowa needing to win this game are the same reasons Indiana would have to, or would really want to win this game, because all it's going to take is 1 game that can determine a season. And I think it's really important for Iowa to start out on top. All right, let's read a little bit more. One of the top 3 players Indiana has coming back, Ty Fryfogle, wide receiver. After a couple of solid seasons of production, Fryfogle, what a sweet last name. He's had 721 yards on 37 receptions, 19.1 yards. And then Tywin Mullen, 5'10 cornerback, En route to a first-team All-Big Ten sophomore year, Mullen tallied 3 INTs, 37 tackles, and 3.5 sacks. This was after leading the conference in passes defended his freshman campaign. In his highlight package, he shows a nose for the ball in the most sensational way. I mean, look at this. Let's look at it. Screw it. Let's see his. We're not going to watch all of it, but okay, nice tackles. Let's keep rolling, shall we? Assorted commentary, yada, yada, yada. Did having spring actually matter? Much was made of Spencer Petras having a spring as Iowa started, despite going into the season with more on-campus time as a redshirt junior than Nate Stanley had as a senior, but I digress. In open practices, he ran back the Spencer Petras experience with some good throws, some bad throws, and some ugly throws. If the tune doesn't change despite the extra work in New Jersey, then seriously, what are we doing here? Listen, guys, I have been very vocal that the Iowa Hawkeye season, the entirety of it is not on the quarterback. There are several positions that when they play solid mean way more than the quarterback. Running back, the defense, but you could say the defensive line, things like that. Quarterback matters, but at Iowa has found a way to limit it. And if you look, if you just allow yourself to look at the entirety of Spencer's season last year, in his first season as a starter, it was actually pretty solid. I mean, most guys in their first year struggle pretty heavily. And with the exception of the first 2-3 games, Spencer had a pretty solid season. So, I feel pretty good that he will have a much better season this upcoming year. The lines, Iowa has 2 stars in the trenches, yada, yada, yada. Let us read the conclusion to this article. Part of what made the 2019 season so compelling was the sheer volume of kicks Keith Duncan took and made. His ability to consistently hit kicks inside the 50 yards enabled a conservative offense which felt all too willing to take the 3 points. I got to say, that seems kind of nitpicky considering Iowa was top 50 in scoring offense last season, averaging over 30 points per game. And again, with the exception of the first 2 games, Iowa beat most teams by double digits. So anyways, it didn't really, his ability to, blah, 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 blah. It didn't really burn Iowa, but it certainly made them more boring. Whatever. With Caleb Shudak as the primary kicker, all we know is he has the leg. I still think about his 60-yard field goal against Northwestern, which went up the uprights, but does he have the accuracy? Does Casino Kirk return with a little more leniency in going for it on 4th down or turn the boot loose? Given the way Iowa plays games, a field goal can be the difference between a win and a loss. Hell, it was twice last season, which is why I had Caleb Shudak as number 3 in my top 5 players that will determine Iowa Hawkeye success. It matters for the Iowa Hawkeyes how the kicker actually performs, and I think he will be just fine. He's a senior, and he has a good leg. At the end of the day, he doesn't have to be Keith Duncan. All he has to be is, for the most part, consistent. Let's say he Caleb Shudak kicks 20 field goals. Hopefully he makes at least 15. And if he, kicks 20 extra points, hopefully he makes 17. That would be solid. All right, let's move on to our second game that will determine this Iowa Hawkeye season. Guys, I have to choose Wisconsin. This game has mattered so much for both Wisconsin and Iowa. The sad fact is that Wisconsin has been on the winning side much more than Iowa recently, but I do think we are starting to see things change a little bit. And this game is going to be no different. It will matter a ton in this Iowa Hawkeye campaign. And if we look back here, let's see which game it is for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Looks like, they still have plenty of games after this one. And so that is good right there. It's pretty good. But guys, it would be foolish not to say Wisconsin. This game matters a ton for both Iowa and Wisconsin. They're so similar. And the bottom line, guys, is when one game can determine, the difference between first and second, if you can get a win head to head and virtually be up a game and a half over that other team, it is a big deal. All right, let's see what this guy has to say on Black Heart Gold Pants. The Wisconsin Badgers have been a thorn in the Hawkeye side for the better part of the decade, so we enter the 2021 season wondering if last season's shellacking of the Hawkeyes over Wisconsin is a blip on the matchup's radar or a flip of the script in Iowa's favor. The rivalry turned to Whiskey's favor on the well-chronicled 2010 game in Kinnick Stadium. True. It's weird how true that is. Throughout the 2010s, Wisconsin became the ballet of the Big Ten West ball, or the belle of the Big Ten West ball. 75% win percentage, 6 New Year's, 6 bowls with a 2-4 record, including 0-4 in Pasadena, 6 Big Ten championship games, which, by the way, Iowa fans, if you can learn anything, it's what is possible. If Wisconsin can do this, so can Iowa. And 3 conference championships. They've done it on the back of stellar play in the trenches, true, and an assembly line of elite running backs, also true. When I wrote on 247hawkeye.com what the biggest difference between Iowa and Wisconsin was, it was the running game. When Iowa has when Iowa has comparable running backs to Wisconsin, Penn State, some of the top tier teams, they usually win, or it's very, very close. But recently, outside of 2015 and a little bit with Akram Wadley, and then again when Tyler Goodson was better than Wisconsin's running back, Wisconsin has had the better running back, and so has Penn State. But when Iowa has a guy that is comparable and sometimes better, Iowa is in phenomenal shape. But the bottom line is Wisconsin has been an assembly line, and it is kind of surprising that Iowa has not, considering how much they run the football. Let's see here. To put into perspective just how much of an outlier last year's run game was, 3.9 yards per carry for Wisconsin, it was the lowest they've experienced since 2015's 3.8. They're often above 5 yards a carry, including regular appearances of 6 yards per carry. That is pretty nice. It's pretty nice. If anybody is a Seinfeld fan, pretty good. I don't do it very good, but much like Iowa, though, defense is what carries Wisconsin. Last season was no exception, despite the record at 17.4 points per game, allowed 9th in the country. If Phil Steele is correct, all of his models have them winning the rest, with 4 or the 9 generating 12-0 seasons. The Badgers will return to the form they held for the 2010s. Listen, guys, maybe that's true, but I'm not going to hold my head on Phil Steele's little formulation, okay? Because if you believe Phil Steele's formulation, I guarantee last year you wouldn't have thought Iowa had much of a chance against Wisconsin, and they shellacked them, folks. I mean, it was not close. And then obviously, guys, we look at Wisconsin. They have Graham Mertz coming back, who, I mean, let's be honest. The dude had a very average season with one good game, which came because he was playing a pretty terrible team and they didn't have any film on him. They had no tape on his tendencies. In college and the pros, film matters. It matters so much. I mean, just thinking back to myself in college water polo, how to detail game reports were and how hard it was to just do much of anything. That's just the way it is. So we'll see what Graham Mertz can do, but I'll be honest with you guys, and I know a lot of you guys will not agree with this, but if I could choose Graham Mertz over Spencer Petras or, just the Iowa quarterback room, I don't think I would. He hasn't shown me any reason to do that. And matter of fact, Spencer Petras beat him head to head. Here are his stats: 61.1%. Oh, nice. It's head to head with Petras. Petras was 57.1%. They both averaged 6.4 yards per attempt. Both had 9 touchdowns and both had 5 interceptions. And matter of fact, if you take out the Illinois game where he balled out, but Illinois sucked and they didn't have film on him, he was actually 57% and 5.8 yards per attempt. Anyways, all right. And then they have Jalen Berger, 6 foot, 209-pound running back. We'll see what he can do. And the 6'5", 242-pound redshirt senior, Jake Ferguson, and some other guys on defense. Listen, guys, when Iowa and Wisconsin play against each other, it's literally the difference between who wins is like, one team having a slightly better receiving core than the other. And that's it. Or the running game being slightly better. And I look at Iowa and I don't see any position that Wisconsin is widely better than Iowa. Not the quarterback, not the running game as opposed to past seasons, not the wide receiver group or including tight end, and certainly not defense. I mean, it's pretty similar, but I would argue Iowa is better in the wide receiver game. They are slightly ahead in the running game. They do have a slightly better offensive line. They do have a slightly better secondary. And the linebacking group is probably the same, if not Iowa, again, has head-to-head there. I'm telling you, folks, Seth Benson and Jack Campbell are going to be very special this season. So let's get to the conclusion here. Can Iowa assert themselves in the run game? Iowa games are always heavy on ball control, but the imperative seems to ramp up when facing Bucky, especially in Madison. The Hawks have struggled in that area until last season's relative explosion as Tyler Goodson and Mekhi Sargent combined for 157 yards on 24 carries. The Hawks' 4.4 yards per carry was just the second time at or above 4 since 2008 against Wisconsin. If they want a chance to win, they'll very likely need to replicate that output. Turnovers. The other time Iowa averaged over 4 yards a carry was in 2018, a home game derailed by very untimely errors from the Hawkeyes. I was actually at this game, and yeah, this is the only Iowa game I've been to, and it was shocking. Iowa had it in their grasp, but they didn't know. They hadn't beat Wisconsin in a while, and they didn't know how. They didn't know how to beat them, honestly. And I know some of you guys are going to be like, that's not a thing, not knowing how to beat someone. No, it is, because you start to tighten up and get a little strange. And they certainly got tight in this one. In 2015, Iowa could not do anything offensively, but won with 4 takeaways of their own. Heck, Josh Jackson's 2 pick sixes kept Iowa in the game for a half in 2017. All to say, no matter what the best laid plans may be, they could be derailed by an inability to maintain control of the football. So there you guys have it. Iowa versus Wisconsin is the second game, and we will now be moving on to the third and final most important Iowa Hawkeye game that will determine the 2021-2022 season. And there you guys see it. Northwestern. I'll be honest with you guys. I almost chose Penn State because Iowa and Penn State have developed quite a rivalry, and especially when Nate Stanley was the quarterback, Iowa just could not get over the hump, and it just that added another loss. And had they won, the confidence would have been a lot better. Things like that. But when I look at what the Penn State game means to Iowa, they're not in the same division, and a loss versus them and or a win, I don't see that being higher than Northwestern. Iowa versus Northwestern, if Iowa gets a win, means a full game ahead of Northwestern, and losing means being a full game back, which literally determined them not playing against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. And matter of fact, Iowa last year beat Penn State, but lost to Northwestern, and the Northwestern one actually ended up mattering a little bit, just slightly more. So that example is why I ultimately chose Northwestern here. Now let's take a look at the Northwestern Wildcats, and I got to tell you guys, I hate Northwestern. They bother me a lot, both in basketball and football. They are the team of guys that don't have the best athletes in the world, but they are very smart. They're very disciplined. And Iowa should always beat them, but they don't, because Northwestern is so dang disciplined. It's weird. I dislike Northwestern more than I dislike Iowa State, honestly. But anyways, here we go. Frankly, it's for the best, as the Northwestern Wildcats are deserving of the Friday news dump treatment, because they will always scare me as an opponent, even when they aren't so scary. They beat the Hawkeyes last season after yielding a 17-0 lead, and then Jedi mind tricking Brian Ferentz into calling 50 Spencer Petras passes en route to a suffocating 21-20 win in the low point of Iowa's 2020 season. That was pretty crazy. Brian Ferentz, in my eyes, had a pretty good offensive coordinator year, but that game was not so good. We'll get to some even sadder stats later in the write-up. There are plenty of them. As for what they return, Phil Steele has them with just 8 returning starters and 118th in his returning experience metric. They've allowed 23 points or less a game each of the last 6 seasons, with only 2017's offense scoring more than 25 points a game over the same time period. In other words, nobody has mastered winning close games like Pat Fitzgerald. Wow, that's incredible. I did not know that. They're 18-6 over that time span in 1-score games. Oh, and Pat Fitzgerald has a 500 or better record against every team in the West since its inception. They beat Wisconsin after this tweet. Let's see. 4-3 against Iowa. Yeah, they have done well against Iowa, and to be honest, Iowa more often than not should have beat them. I mean, realistically, Iowa should have a head-to-head against Northwestern of 6 wins, 5 wins and 2 losses, not 4 Northwestern wins and 3 Iowa wins. All right, let's look at some of their players. They have Ryan Helsinki from South Carolina. They also have the former 5-star Clemson quarterback. I'm going to see if I can pull him up here. There we have it, Hunter Johnson, which, I don't really care what a guy used to be ranked, because once they get to college, they are what they are. What they were in high school is pretty irrelevant. Um, you know, I think it will be difficult for Northwestern to plug and play a guy for a second time like what they were able to do last year. It is very difficult. And part of the reason they were able to do it last year is because the guy was a super senior. He was an ultimate leader. And he was able to take those young guys on his back and say, hey, we're all good here. As long as we play the football we know how to play, we're just fine. I don't think they will have that type of leadership again this season. And what's crazy is Peyton Ramsey, I believe, was the Indiana quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, some of the other guys that are pretty good on this Northwestern team: left tackle Peter Skoronski, classic Illinois offensive lineman name, Skoronski, just like the Iowa freshman David Davidkoff, just classic. The other guy, Brandon Joseph here, safety, looks pretty decent. Let's see here. Assorted commentary. Can Northwestern keep it close enough to let the coaching advantage trump Iowa's talent? It's a good question. I tend to believe Iowa has some of the best coaching in the Big Ten, but there have been years where it has not been better than Northwestern. I think it is now, but I look back to, Greg Davis and, who is the wide receiver coach for Iowa? Hold on. It was Bobby Kennedy, that guy. Anyways, yeah, but point is, there have been times where Northwestern probably was slightly better, and it turned out to be in their favor. Now, I don't think so. Iowa is probably one of the best coached teams in the Big Ten, but like last year, Northwestern was slightly better, and they won by 1 point. Anyways, to be honest, it's anyone's guess. Kirk Ferentz or Pat Fitzgerald. I'd probably go with Kirk Ferentz, but Pat Fitzgerald definitely is one of the better Big Ten coaches. However, experience is typically what defines great Wildcat squads, and this team lacks that returning production. Yet it never seems to matter when they take the field against Iowa. Fitz is a master in close games. See above stat. Don't see that. But it becomes even more stark when he faces Iowa. In 9 single possession games, the Cats have come out on top in 8 of them. And what's funny? Actually, now that I think about it, it are the close games that they win. The times that Iowa has won, they shellacked Northwestern, just like in 2015. It's utterly perplexing just how much of a hold Fitz has on Iowa in such games, but it's there. Here we go. Look at this. 21-20, Northwestern wins. 14-10, Northwestern wins. And they have beaten Iowa 4 of the last 5 times. Yeah, the last time Iowa beat them was 2013, it looks like. Oh, these are the close games. And Iowa was able to barely get ahead. Anyways, simply put, it'll come down to whether Iowa can put enough distance between themselves and Northwestern. The 2019 game, as ugly as it was, is a fair template. Iowa gained just 302 yards, but 196 came from guys currently on the roster: Tyler Goodson, Tyron Tracy, and Sam Laporta. They'll need to have big games, and this is, well, let's finish it. But they'll still need to win the field position battle and swing it with a couple of big plays. Tracy just had 2 receptions. Considering Iowa has scored more than 20 points against Fitz Wildcats in just 6 of 16 meetings. The stats are clear, though. Kirk simply can't afford to get into a phone booth with Fitz, as Iowa's 5-2 in games decided by 8 points or more. The 2 losses were in maybe the worst seasons of Kirk's tenure outside the very start. And last but not least, is Iowa still in the West race by the time they play Northwestern? If Iowa is successful in a couple of the games against Indiana, Penn State, and Wisconsin, the importance on this game ramps up, considering they have to face Minnesota, Illinois, and Nebraska in the following 3 weeks. Considering Iowa hasn't played a divisionally relevant football game since 2015, the pressure could be immense. Well, there you guys have it, guys. The 3 most important games, and obviously for the Iowa Hawkeyes, obviously there are other games that are very important. That game against Nebraska might be important, not for Nebraska, but for Iowa. And I mean, literally in 2015, had Iowa lost, I think they would have been tied with Wisconsin. So there are games that matter a lot, but the 3 games I'm going with is Iowa versus Northwestern, Iowa versus Wisconsin, and Iowa versus Indiana, with that one Big Ten East crossover. And, I'm curious what you guys see as the top 3 most important games for the Iowa Hawkeyes. If I had to go in order, I would say Iowa versus Wisconsin 1, Iowa versus Northwestern 2, and Iowa versus Indiana 3. But to me, I see it more as a 2A, 2B, and I could, make an argument for both. But anyways, I hope you guys like this video. Like, comment, share. Literally, the most important video or most popular videos I've done have had 1 or 2 people, whether it's an Iowa player or whatever, share the video out, and then it just goes crazy. You can make a difference doing that. I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button. It really means a lot when you do that. This is the place where you can get everything Iowa Hawkeye content related. But if you don't want to do that, again, comment, like, and share. I live in California, so it's always nice to chat it up with you guys. And last but not least, be sure to go to 247hawkeye.com. Don't miss the NHA podcast every Wednesday. You can find it on this channel. And if you want to support the show, the PayPal link is in the description. Without further ado, DBAP, don't be a pussy willow. And facts or feelings, your feelings don't matter. Love y'all. Go Hawks.